When I was in high school, I didn't have any friends. I mean, I wasn't the kid sitting on their own in the corner of the schoolyard kind of thing. I just didn't have any solid friendships or groups. However, my second cousin, who was related to me through being fostered by a distant relative, was in the same year level as me. Through being somewhat related, we became friendly and I was introduced to a small trio of mates. I shared similar interests with them like computers, video games, books, and war stuff, so I didn't mind hanging out with them. Now, my cousin was always strange. Weird and strange and peculiar, I'd say, but I'd accepted this as I'm fairly sort of an eccentric person myself, and I pretty much put it down to him being a foster kid with a rough upbringing. Apparently, his biological mom's addiction is what led to him being taken by child services and ended up in a foster home. Sad, I know, but not uncommon, unfortunately. Although with his odd behavior, the other guys and I suspected that my cousin was also gay. It was more of an uncomfortable, humorous suspicion based on his flamboyant personality and touchy-feely antics. There were a few times when we'd all play fight, wrestle, and get each other in headlocks and all that kind of stuff, and we swore that one time he was, should we say, physically aroused from it. Needless to say, we avoided any physical interaction from then on. Now, don't get me wrong, we weren't against him or anything like that, but you can imagine the level of discomfort we felt, especially since we were just 14. Regardless of the strangeness of my cousin, I was dealing with an alcoholic father on a daily basis and a subsequent turbulent home life myself, so I think I stayed friends with him in a kind of kindred spirit way, based on the account of us both having screwed up families. Now, to continue the story, it's important that I describe this next part, and I hope it makes sense to any non-Australians. In my town, there are a whole bunch of high schools scattered across the area, but when students have to finish year 10 from their respective colleges, and then move on to year 11 and 12 before they graduate, almost every student is sent to the same big school, right in the middle of town. Strange concept, I know, but it's kinda cool that every public school teenager in town spends 2 years all together. You meet new people, attend big parties, and pretty much forget about the last 4 years that you spent at your old school. Importantly though, when you attend this particular school, you have complete autonomy and responsibility for your own class attendance. So if you want to skip any periods and just walk into the city to get some chips and gravy, buy some clothes or music, or just loiter, there's nothing to stop you. So you can imagine what it's like to go from being under constant authority for 4 years to suddenly attending a new big school in the middle of town with complete freedom to come and go as you liked. So with the school being in the center of town, there was a big public park that served as the school's unofficial grounds, and importantly to the story, neighboring the main campus building was a primary school. Like me, my cousin wasn't too interested in studying, and the newfound freedom only enhanced our apathy towards school, particularly attendance. We'd walked into town, buy coffee and food from the cheap bakery, and spend hours at the Land Cafe playing Command and Conquer Generals in Battlefield 1942. Yep, that gives you an idea of what time period this took place in. Now one day, as I was expecting that we would visit our usual haunt, my cousin tells me that he's heading next door to the primary school and I should come along. Apparently, he'd been granted access to the school to help children read and had been doing this for some time. As someone who loves reading, grammar, and literature in general, I thought, that sounds fun. So we enter the primary school. The whole time, my cousin is leading the way, and we walk up the main stairs through the corridor and into a busy, noisy classroom. The teacher of the classroom acknowledges us and continues on with her work without really paying any attention. Strangely, I didn't even have to explain why I was there. I remember listening to kids who must have been in grade 3 or 4 reading and helping them pronounce words, etc., and thinking to myself, surely this all must be legit. But how odd is it that we just kind of walked into this like that? I happen to notice that my cousin is spending pretty much the entire time with one particular student. He seems to have a familiarity with this boy, and he even introduces me to the kid. The boy seems happy to see my cousin, and my cousin likewise. Must be his favorite student, I thought, and went back to listening to the reading. The second time he took me to the school, the teacher of the classroom was not expecting us. I can vaguely remember her saying something like she didn't know anything about it and it was best that we come back another time. It was a weird thought, but maybe there really was just some mix-up and the teacher wasn't notified of us. In case you were wondering why I kept going, I'd always shown an interest in education, and at one point I even studied for 3 years to become a primary school teacher, until changing career choices for something a little less stressful. However, the third time my cousin asked me to join him, I agreed. But this time, it was different, and I never went there again. As we were approaching the main campus building with him leading the way as usual, I got a strange feeling. It was a different time of the day compared to the last 2 times, and there seemed to be a lack of confidence in my cousin. Upon approaching the door, he seemed nervous, like he's really reluctant to go in. He hesitates as he pushes the entrance doors open and sort of creeps through the hallway, up to the stairs, cautiously looking out for somebody. We make it to the stairs and into the corridor just outside the classroom, and he's kind of just hesitating to do anything, all the while with this sort of creepy, cheeky grin on his face. This time, the classroom isn't noisy. There's no hustle and bustle, just quiet murmuring coming from inside. I can distinctly remember thinking, we're really not meant to be here, are we? And I asked my cousin what exactly it was that he was doing here. Are they expecting us this time? He still had that disturbing, presumptuous grin on his face. Assuming that they were indeed not expecting us again and we might get into trouble, I left. I just thought in that incident that my cousin was just being audacious. I mean, he was an audacious person, stealing money from his parents, hacking the school's admin and so forth, so I just thought that was another aspect of his juvenility. That was until one day, as we were chatting, he mentioned the boy from the classroom, the one I saw him so fixated on. He told me that he had still been going over to the school to see him, to talk to him not only in the classroom, but also at the playground. My cousin also said that he'd seen him outside of the school and that he'd actually gone to watch him play soccer on the weekend, and he was planning on going again next Saturday. Yeah, that's when the alarm bells went off in my head. Even more confronting was that he even proposed visiting the boy's house. I can't remember how I reacted or what I even said. I think I just did the whole, oh, okay. And in my mind, being like, what the actual F? I started to put all the pieces together. The constant visits to the school, the trespassing and sneaking into the campus. He was never, ever meant to be there. There was no helping the kids read. There was no assisting the teacher. None. It was all a cover to see this one boy. My cousin, only 16 years old, was stalking a child, and I was the only one who knew it. After much thought, I eventually decided to contact our school's assistant principal. It was more of a, this is something to be concerned about, right? And I briefly told her everything I knew, what my cousin had said, and what he was doing and what I had seen. I received a reply email, and she was, well, very interested to talk to me. I can remember sitting in her office, a large room with old portraits and books, thinking that I'm way over my depth here. I was soiling myself, thinking that I was going to get in trouble for being an accomplice or something and that I just opened the lid of something bigger than I can handle. But the assistant principal was supportive, and after a few face-to-face meetings, the school took action. I don't know what they actually did, but my cousin was definitely banned from even going near the primary school. He dropped out, or might have even been expelled, I don't know, but he just kind of vanished. I also think that the police were notified too, and subsequently, this must have put him on their radar, because the story doesn't quite end here. A few years later, I saw an article in the local newspaper. It was concerning a local man who had been arrested for grooming a child and suspiciously observing and stalking the grounds of a primary school on a constant basis. His home was raided, and his computers were confiscated. The hard drives were loaded with illicit images of children and personal photographs, and after numerous charges, he was consequently jailed. Interestingly, the man's name was printed in the article, and as you guessed it, it was none other than my cousin. I was shocked, but oddly, not surprised. And I think, did I, without knowing, begin a process all those years ago that led to the apprehension of a predator? What if I had ignored it and not taken action, and in not doing so, prevented something much, much worse? If you enjoyed this scary story, listen to thousands more, either over on the Let's Read YouTube channel or podcast.